Yes, I just unmuted myself. Sorry. Good evening, ghouls and ghoulettes. I just made that word up, but that's all right. It works. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And as you can see on the upper corner, there is the introduction of the new Lady Vampira. She is the sorceress. Lady Vampira tonight and during the month of October is going to be Halloweeny because we've got that coming up and I'm excited about it. So we are going to start off getting the month of October that's coming in a day kicked off. And I have some awesome guests with me tonight, guests and a couple of co-hosts that you all know and love. So I'm going to, without further ado, bring them on with me. And let me see here. Where's my buttons? And 1 second here. Ladies first, I have Miss Netter to join me. I haven't seen you in a while. It's good to have you back. I'm going to bring Troy on because they're kind of sharing a mic. Troy and Knitter are sharing a mic here.
Buenas noches, señorita Vampira.
Buenas noches.
Salud.
Qué buena verte. And good to see you both. And so I am so glad to have you here because you can help me invite our guest here tonight, Mr. Kamran Pasha. Good to have you here. And we're going to move the guest up top so I can see him. How are you?
Lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, right there.
I like it. I like the design. Great to see you, Troy, and always lovely to see you. And I hope I can hear Netter today because I don't hear her. So I don't know what's going on.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah.
She's coming through my mic.
Yes.
Okay.
She's literally 5 feet in front of me.
She's vampiring through your mic.
Yes.
Yes, she is. Absolutely.
Vibes coming through. And yes, I wish I could make that little logo a little bit smaller. I'm going to have to figure out and ask the PJ to see how it's done. So I'm sorry that she's there in your corner, but I'm going to try to figure that out. But yes, lovely artist, by the way. She is. It's an honor to have her do my work here. A comic book out. She is awesome. I read it. It's great. I'll have to tell you guys about that later. But I want to say hi to all those in here. Miss Lisa, thank you for being here. Of course, PJ helping out in the room, crowd control. And Dr. O, thanks for all your help, making me shine there. And Mackie, hey, how's it going? Good to see you. Thank you for being here. I'm doing this on my classes. All right. And Zax, good to see you here. Agent Pepsi, hey, good to see you. And those of you lurking in the back as well. But it's good to bring out Vampira again. I love Halloween. And so, great subject that we're going to be talking about tonight. One of, it seems, everybody's favorites. I wanted to try and find, and maybe some of you awesome nerds out there will know the statistics on this, but it seems to be everybody's favorite, the vampires. They've been around for such a long time, and it's amazing how popular they are. So I was always curious. And real quick with PJ with the $2 super chat. Thanks, PJ. Spooky, yes, very spooky. I'm supposed to be spooky. Thank you. It doesn't help when I snort. Sorry.
That's not spooky. That's just cute.
That's not spooky. I might scare you if I snort in a quiet room when you're not expecting it. But so my question has always been, like, how on a scale is our popular are vampires, in the sense, do people tend to like the sexy vampire, or they tend to like the scary vampire, or what makes them so, I don't know, where people just can't get enough of them?
I think it's the mysteriousness behind it. Yeah, it's
Could
like,
be.
where did the very first vampire come from? How did they come about? You know, it's like, there's a big mystery behind that. How did all that start?
Well, I actually have one culture's origin story for it that
Cool.
brings it back to the actual origin of humanity.
Yep. I know what he's going to say.
You know what I'm saying, Troy? Which is the story of Lilith, right?
Yep.
You know, the story of Lilith, which is an ancient Jewish story. Actually, there's parallels to it in Islam as well. The story of Lilith. It's the same character, but it is something that originates in very early Jewish legend that the first woman was not Eve. The first woman was Lilith, which literally means the night, and she was the difference in the story of Adam and Eve is Eve was formed out of Adam, out of his rib, right? Whereas that's not the first woman in the Jewish story. Lilith was not. She was actually formed of the same dust as Adam, so they were physically actually of the same origin. They were equal, and so in the story, when God says, "Okay, you can have sex now, you can procreate in the garden," Adam wants to be on top. And Lilith says, "No, you're not going to be on top of me. We're equal. So we're going to have sex side by side, or I'm going to be on top, right?" And so Adam finds her rebellious and can't deal with her, doesn't want her on top, and so God exiles Lilith from the garden, and then creates Eve out of Adam's body, and because it's out of his body, she has to be submissive to him. That's the original Jewish tale. But what happens to Lilith is she goes off, and there's a place she goes off by the Red Sea. Right? She goes off into a cave by the Red Sea and vows revenge on the human race, which is now Adam and Eve, right? Who essentially usurped her origin story as the mother of humanity, and she vows revenge on the children of Eve. And so she starts copulating with these demons and having all these demonic children. And what she does personally is that in the Jewish story, she appears at night in order to essentially vampire off children. It's like sudden infant death syndrome would be explained. Infant deaths were largely explained by Lilith would come in at night and take this child of her rival Eve and drain its life force. And that's why we have amulets going back a couple of thousand years and more. Archaeologists found anti-Lilith amulets in the Middle East from Jewish communities that they would put over crypts to try to protect the baby from this. Literally, she was called the mother of vampires, right? But what's interesting about Lilith is that she predates even Judaism because she's mentioned by the Babylonians and the Sumerians. There's two figures that are in the biblical tradition that are mentioned, which is interesting that they're mentioned in pre-biblical religions, which is Lilith and Michael. And Lilith she's more of a handmaiden of a goddess, but she's also this powerful goddess in ancient Sumerian literature. And Michael is this guardian being, and he's interesting. He's guardian being in the Abrahamic religions too. So some scholars think, what is the origin? There we go. What is the scholars would say it's just a historical legend that went from culture to culture. Others, more occult oriented, would suggest, is it mean that Lilith is a real being that keeps popping up and people had stories about her, just like Michael keeps popping up, that name keeps popping up, right? But that is one culture's origin story of vampires going back to the origin of humanity.
Yep. And what Kamran was saying, it ties directly into my whole thought process, bringing it up to the closer to modern day, where people seem to look at, well, I mean, the younger kids tend to look at the sparkly vampires and say, well, that's where they became, these heroic, lovey-dovey type characters. Others will say, no, it was Bela Lugosi. Bela Lugosi, made it very romantic. But going all the way back to Adam's first wife, right? There was a connection between, well, let's face it, sex, and death and the demonic, and what was symbolized by the Lamia or Lilitu or Lilith, as you were saying. It goes all the way back. Every iteration, every culture's story of a vampire-like creature has this. They bring death, but there's something appealing about it. Maybe that's our sinful nature. Maybe that's our, the part we wrestle with, but there's something attractive about it. The French call death la petite muerte, the little death, right? So
Well, they call something else though. Let me just work. Yeah, but and to answer.
Well, but that's what I meant. That duality, both those things, right?
And and to just answer the chat that's up here by our friend Heath, who's a wonderful guy. He's subscribed to my Patreon. He's really brilliant. Heath, yes, there is a tradition of Cain being a vampire figure who sort of, because Cain is the one that murdered his brother Abel, starts murder amongst the human race, and then is exiled to live in the world, sort of. And there's stories that he became an immortal being, forever, never allowed to die, and that essentially it's a kind of vampire creature. And so those are parallel stories. I guess Lilith is just older because she's like the great aunt of Cain, right? And right. So but to actually go back to what Netta was saying and to link in what Troy is saying, I've been, there's this great book that I hope people will get. This is an incredible book, the Vampire Almanac, which is just lists all the stories of vampires from all over the world, and an incredible research point for anyone interested. And in my study of all these vampiric stories from all over the world, we're talking about Asia, Africa, South America, pre-Columbian, all of that, they consistently seem to tap into sex, or at least have something to do with childbirth or the loss of a child, because that, to bring what Netta is saying, which is the issue of mystery. There is no greater mystery to the human being than sex and death. It's life and death, right? The origin of life. Yeah. And I mean, life and death are mirror images of each other. And the idea of does consciousness survive death has been the primordial question of the human race, right? And it's not surprising that every culture has some kind of vampiric story that relates to childbirth or death, because they're both linked.
And, I did want to speak to what Alicia, was it Alicia? I missed the comment that went by, but saying Nosferatu was not romantic. Don't be mistaken by what I'm saying. When we're talking sex, romanticism is the cleaning up of sex. It's romanticizing it. It's making it, this kind of beautiful love sort of thing. Whereas vampires exist on the other side of that, the sinful
on the animalistic side, on the predator.
Yes,
side.
The animalistic side. Exactly.
If you've seen Nosferatu, I mean, he hovers. I think it's one of the greatest movies ever made, just movie of all time, right?
Absolutely.
And the cinematography is so stunning, where he's hovering over his victim, and it's very rapey sexual. I mean, it's very frightening, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's very much of a predator shadow. That's a sexual predator on top of her. So you can't, even with this horrific image of Max Schreck, was an incredible actor that created this eternal character.
Yeah. And it's important to remember that the Nosferatu, I don't know German, the Symphony of Evil or whatever it was really a trademark infringement on Dracula. It was meant to be the Dracula story. So you see those parallels. Dracula was equally a monster. He was described as not attractive, and yet there are definitely those images: the man coming into the woman's bedroom, the drinking of blood from the chest, and it's all very graphic in a Victorian sense.
Can I reveal some? Oh, I'm sorry, Netta, go please. I interrupted you.
I was gonna say there's a difference between Bela Lugosi and Nosferatu. Bela Lugosi, he had those haunting, beautiful eyes, so you would be attracted just to that. I mean, I look at my husband's big brown eyes, and I'm always attracted. But Nosferatu was not an attractive person. He had the long nails. He, just was very gaunt and pale and not attractive at all. So how he would be able to draw on a victim is a little puzzling. I'm thinking it just has to be hypnotism.
The fact is that Stoker's description was somewhere in between those two films, actually.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Nosferatu is very hard for me to watch because it is such a terrifying movie.
Yes.
And the first time I watched it, there's a moment in there where the vampire is he's staring directly into the camera. And I guess the scene, he's like looking into the window of his victim, but he's looking right into the camera. And I almost shut the TV off. I was watching it. I could almost shut it because it was too much. Because the actor is essentially hypnotizing the audience at that moment. He's just staring straight at you. And so that is very much a kind of hypnosis. And that's also in Bram Stoker's original novel. Bram Stoker's novel is very much, it's a Victorian novel. And so you can feel the sexual repression right there.
Yes.
I mean, you can, as you're reading it, it feels like it's 50 Shades of Grey just waiting to jump out, trying to get out, right? you could feel that energy, that this is essentially an erotic novel.
Yep.
Hiding behind the horror. But that whole thing, blood, eroticism, life, death. But if I may, I just want to make one reference to Nosferatu of something that I learned actually on YouTube. Because I started talking about Nosferatu somewhere, and someone sent me a message as a result of that YouTube conversation that I looked into. It was really fascinating. So it appears that Nosferatu was actually itself, the movie was part of an occult ritual. So, and I confirmed this because it was sent to me by someone. I was like, take a look at this. And I saw the evidence on it. The filmmakers, the German filmmakers behind it, the producers and others, apparently they were involved in a very infamous secret society magical cult group in the early 20th century that I have books on called the Fraternity of Saturn, right? And the Fraternity of Saturn was this Germanic occult group that was essentially magicians, right? Like Aleister Crowley type figures. Mm-hmm. And they believed they had a sort of demonic type being that was the manifestation of Saturn. That was what they were worshiping. And they wanted to bring that being into the material world. And so they modeled Nosferatu, Mark Schreck's makeup, on the being that they were worshiping, this terrifying being. The idea being that by having people watch it, it would create the egregore through people's consciousness that being would then physically manifest into this world, right? Sort of like an Antichrist type thing, bringing the and so that was kind of thwarted by Bram Stoker's wife's lawsuit that made them destroy all the copies of Nosferatu. And so that was the original plan, was it's going to spread all over the world. Everyone's going to use their mental focus, and this being would enter the world, right, in a physical form. Except that in the 1970s, this one copy that everyone forgot about was discovered. That's why we have Nosferatu today. It should have been destroyed. So now that movie's out there, and the old plan of you being a participant in manifesting this being has been reactivated. And that to me is absolutely fascinating because, again, you can't kill the vampire. It's back.
It almost makes me feel like that 2000 film Shadow of the Vampire wasn't really that far off.
That's what I would say. Own physical media.
Mm-hmm.
All of those are DVDs behind me.
Yeah, that's a topic I would love to get into on my channel. Maybe I'll have Fanzine back on and we'll talk about the preservation of film and how so many great films have been lost over the decades. But I had no idea about that, Kamran.
For me, my internet stinks, and so whenever I watch something on streaming, just at the climactic moment, it's like spinning.
I don't know. Some of those scary movies, maybe it's better that you have a chance to decompress a little bit.
I'm not a big fan of streaming. I don't believe it's the future. I think it's a fad. We'll see how long it goes.
That's why I always say own physical media, and if you have no other choice, make your own physical media.
I love it. I love physical media.
Yeah, exactly. Because they can delete Nosferatu.
Yeah,
they
can.
If that was the only, they can delete it, and you never see it again. That's why I got a copy. So I'm going to fulfill the Fraternity Saturnas' occult plan by having my physical copy.
It's a lot harder now because it's now fallen into public domain, so you could literally stream it on your own YouTube channel if you wanted to. I'm not suggesting you do, though.
Yes.
This is what's fascinating to me is this is such a worldwide phenomenon that's ancient. The Greeks had stories about these kinds of beings. There's some reason that this is archetypal.
Yep, absolutely. And I think even to this day, I think we tend to overlook some very real world vampires in our own lives. And I think the internet is a great place to find them. When you get involved in some sort of a heated debate online and you come away from it with your heart racing and you just feel exhausted, and this is just some rando who you don't even know, that's a vampire. They're sucking the life out of you. People have run into that in their offices, in their life, all over the place. There's vampires out there, no doubt.
Yeah, well, the idea of psychic vampires, we all have lives. That's again.
I never liked that term, but I guess that's exactly what they call themselves. Yeah.
No, I think that's a perfectly fair term. They're draining your energy and then draining your psychic ability, and so
absolutely.
And we all, again, that's part of the human condition. I'm sure, primitive human beings in the caves are like, oh, that dude in the tribe is just
that guy. Yeah, exactly. There's a reason that even the earliest tribal cultures would excommunicate people and say, "You're out of here. You can't be part of us because you're just sucking the life out of us."
Agent Pepsi.
You know what? There's something in that. We joke, but there's some truth to that.
Yeah.
But it gets down to what, as I've discovered in my study of this concept worldwide, even more than the blood element of it, it seems to be very parallel to this life force element. That seems to be the issue, whether the blood is removed or not. It is the removal of the life force. And that's what Lilith does. I mean, they take the energy of the soul. And so this idea that there's beings out there that are essentially empty, that are lacking a life force in some fashion, need that life force from the human condition. That seems to be something that is very primordial fear of human beings. Because, I mean, if we think about it, again, going back to the concept of sexuality, there's an energy transfer, male, female, right? But it is not a drain. Energy goes from the masculine into the feminine, and the feminine germinates that and creates life. But the idea of the vampire is that the energy goes in essentially to fill the lack of life.
Yeah, because like Tolkien said, evil does not create; it only corrupts.
It's like, I mean, I've heard stories of just people like hugging other people and taking some of their energy. And after you finish hugging them, you feel drained because they just took some of your energy. I don't know how any of that works, but it's
absolutely true. I've
heard
felt
those
it myself.
before. It's like, okay, that's kind of disturbing because I like to hug. I don't want to hug somebody and either take their energy or they take mine.
Well, it's interesting you say that because we're gonna at some point we'll talk about Bulgaria, because I've been to Bulgaria last year, and on a spiritual trip actually to see ancient Christian and Muslim sites. There's a large Muslim population in Bulgaria, and I actually met an Islamic Sufi mystic there who's become sort of a Facebook friend, right? And he said something to me which is parallel to what you're saying. In a healthy situation, he actually said when human beings physically embrace each other, they actually strengthen each other's energy field.
There's a resonance.
There's a resonance. He says actually, and he was commenting about sort of the way we've approached the last 2 years, where everyone stay away from each other.
Yes.
That's unhealthy on an energetic level. He said, when two people embrace with love, they actually strengthen the immune system of each person, right? And so, of course, the parallel of that is that what if someone is not embracing from a place of love? What if they're embracing from a place of taking from you? Because they don't love themselves, so they have no love to give you to add to your energy field. And that sort of self-hatred is actually the singularity, the black hole that's pulling your energy into them, because they can't love themselves. So they got the energy from somewhere, if it's not from within themselves.
You're making a great point, because I'm realizing as we're talking, everything we're saying about vampires, there's an opposite holy side too, right? So you talk about, I mean, even think about the laying on of hands, right? What makes you feel better than somebody coming to visit you when you're sick, holding your hand, your mom, putting her lips or her palm on your forehead? It always makes you feel better. Kiss the boo-boo, whatever. It is an expression of love that just does something in your mind. There's this biofeedback that heals you, right? And there is the demonic other side of it, the just leeching off of somebody else and taking.
Well, there's a fascinating account. Jesus is obviously famous for his healings, right? Also, the largest number of miracles Jesus is recorded in the Gospels is actually exorcisms, which is in some way related to exorcism. But also healing is sort of one of the central ideas we have of Jesus Christ. And many speak of, the whole laying on hands is very much kind of the way we imagine the process of what he did, and how others in other traditions do it as well. But there's an account in the Gospels, I believe, where a woman she can't get to Jesus in the crowd, and she just manages. She needs help. She's sick. She can't get to him. She just manages to come up behind him and just touch the hem of his robe. And he hasn't seen her. He immediately goes, "What happened?"
I felt the energy go out of me.
Felt the energy go out of me, and he turns, and she's healed. He didn't even do anything. She just went into his aura, and the healing came into her, right? Because what she needed. And he hadn't even done anything. He's like, "What just happened here?" Right? And so that is the positive mirror of that. But again, we're living in a world of duality, and so there has to be a negative version of the story. That's why I think it's so ancient and so universal. And
Yes.
we'll talk today of real incidences where people have told me directly of encountering beings that you would describe as supernatural vampires, right? And I've had 2 stories told to me directly from people I trust of their direct accounts of interacting with supernatural entities in modern day. And so this seems to be not just a legendary phenomenon. People are they're encountering something, and it's too universal for it to just be a bunch of stories.
Yep, I agree.
Real quick before we switch to that, because I know you had something to say about that, I wanted to so PJ with a super sticker of a black cat. I got one of those. Thank you for that. I'm leaving out my little dance for the super chats and super stickers for later. It doesn't flow well with this vibe. So, and for those of you that popped in, thank you so much. And they're talking about several different types, as I see in the chat. We have everything from the sexy vampires to the funny vampires, like the What We Do in Shadows and things like that. I'm just always curious of what, like, the one, like, for example, there are those with the very popular Tom Cruise
Interview with the Vampire.
Interview with the Vampire. Very, very good. They're of course the sexier type, where I think they're popular because of that. The one that scared me the most, though, was the Salem slot.
Oh yeah,
That one was terrifying. I think that sort of vampire. So it almost seems like each vampire has something different to take, like what we're talking about, whether it be energy, whether it be to terrify their victim, whatever reason. We seem to be, everyone seems to have their favorite type of vampire. That one scared the heck out of me. Still does.
Has got an action figure of him right up behind me. Yeah.
Well, again, it's another version of the Nosferatu.
Yeah.
You know, it feels like this. It feels like the Saturn Fraternity are still here, right? And they're still trying, right? Because when this came out, this was early '80s when Sam was appeared on, right? And so at the same time, we had the great fun show Buck Rogers, which I loved, and it had one of the most frightening hours. It did. The space vampire. It's terrifying.
I believe he was called the Vorvan.
The Vorvan. That's right. It's scary today. I mean, you watch this fun, sexy swinger Buck Rogers with hot chicks running around jumpsuits and robots, whatever. And then they have this really terrifying vampire episode that you can't sleep after watching. Yeah. Like, how did this get in here? It feels like the occult society's like, we got to still trying to bring this egregore here.
lots of Stoker Dracula references in there. The name of the ship was the Demeter, just like from Dracula. Yeah. Oh, you're talking my language here, Kamran.
Yeah, but again, I mean, I'm sorry, Nedra. I keep interrupting.
I look at the vampires with the teeth and just go, I've got a really good orthodontist that can help you with that.
Right. Humor is usually a great way to deal with things that are scary, Well,
I mean, but that's the actual thing that it's actually, I believe it was Star Trek that did that great episode, the original Star Trek, where they had this energy beat. There was like it was an energy that essentially
the one where they were fighting with the Klingons over and over again. Yeah.
Vampiric being that was feeding off the anger, right?
Yes.
And how did they defeat that being? They started laughing and having fun and being camaraderie with the Klingons.
Yep.
So again, there's that archetype.
I love that line where Kang says, "I don't need somebody to make me hate humans. I don't fight for you." And he puts his arm around Kirk. I love that.
The original Klingons were perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And Rodman understood, when you make human beings good, they're really boring. So you got to have a galaxy full of interesting villains.
Yep, I agree.
So I'm just keeping up with the chat here.
Cassidy, I always pictured Cassidy as a very, I don't know if in my mind I imagined he was Welsh, but he definitely had like a Cockney accent. You're right. I agree with you.
And the Ryder brothers were saying hi to you all, by the way. So,
and our friend Korean the Witch has a super chat, I think.
Yes. Oh, he does. Oh, thank you so much for that. For the $5 super chat here.
My old driver's license pick.
Oh my God.
That's.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I always interrupt people because I'm just.
That's
talking.
a very interesting. So you make a point about a driver's license picture being a picture of a vampire. So the whole idea of not being able to take a picture of a vampire, not being able to see a vampire in reflection, is this idea, and it goes back to a Victorian concept that because the vampire has no soul, he has no reflection. He can't be seen in a camera. There's no light of his soul coming out.
Well, then why do their clothes disappear? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Well, it's the force field. I always put it as the force field of the. It's like a black hole.
Yeah.
There's what the singularity of the black hole has like an accretion plate around it, which is the force field, the energy. So the accretion plate around the vampire sucks
Exactly.
Answer.
There you go.
That's a good one.
But the Writer brothers, please follow me. I do a lot of talk about Star Trek and Klingons. I'm kind of a Klingon guru. I'll help you out with answers to questions like that. I don't want to get us off topic tonight.
Great guys, and thanks for being here for the raid. They do great raids, and let me see.
Yes, that was a unibrow. And like this big bald head, which I can appreciate, you know.
Bald can be sexy, I believe, and
I like to think so, yeah.
It's high testosterone. But yeah.
Kindred the Embraced. That was a series based on the Vampire the Masquerade role-playing game. That show was so good, had so much potential. Except one of the main characters died between seasons, and they decided to cancel.
Well, that actually, I'm going to get off the screen for a second because I want to show you something that inspired me to show you. Let me get it from my.
Okay.
Hold on, back in a minute. You guys
Okay,
can
go
talk.
ahead.
No worries. We're doing that. We've got. He said, "Thank you for being here." Sorry for those I haven't been able to say hi to aloud, but I had in the chat. And thank you so much, Connie. It was good to see you here. And as we're waiting for Cameron here, Interview with a Vampire was terrifying me as a kid. I accidentally got hold of that and watched it too young, but I do love that movie today. Oh my God.
That movie was a great demonstration of what a great actress Kirsten Dunst was at that age and what she was going to become.
Absolutely.
But very disturbing because she was so young.
Yes.
And I'm glad that they didn't try going into some of the stuff that was actually in the book.
Yeah.
The book is the book is all about essentially this child that becomes a vampire and then grows psychologically sexually.
She's an adult for all intents and purposes in a child's body. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, see, I read the book before I saw the movie, and I think the book was so much better.
It usually is.
Incredible writer. So
She
I want to
was.
share, so this is what I want to show you. You inspired me the role playing game. So I collect tarot cards. And this is my favorite tarot collection. It's actually hard to get nowadays. It's tarot at night. It's really hard to get, and so I'm really glad I bought it when it was still available. But let me show you some of the cards in here. It's really some of the most beautiful stuff I've ever seen. So let me pull out the cards. Hold on, slowly get them out.
These are tarot cards?
These are tarot cards. Yeah, people read them.
Okay.
You can, tarot readings from them.
Sure.
Here's look here. This is the Fool, right? Look how the Fool is, right? I mean, it's really these beautiful.
That's great artwork.
Yeah,
That
it's
is
incredible artwork. This is the Emperor, right? I mean, this is here. You've got the High Priestess. Look how they do the High Priestess.
Wow.
I mean, stunning. Here's the Empress. I think one of my favorites is actually the Hangman. Let me see if I can get the Hangman out here. Here's this one's great. Here's the twins. The lovers, which is a very famous card.
Oh, wow.
So you get two lovers on a grave, and here is where's it? Oh, here, this is one of my favorites. Here's the Hanged Man. The Hanged Man.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
From the upside down there. I mean, this is incredibly evocative art, and if anyone is into divination, and I think tarot is a very effective form of divination.
So you hit on something earlier, Kamran, when you were talking about it being the vampire being very archetypical.
Yes.
And I believe it. You're absolutely right, and that's why it features so well in films and illustration and all of our artwork, because what is artwork but a way of us expressing something that can't necessarily be expressed in words. It can only be we're tapping into something very primordial.
Well, you just hit the issue, because I would believe that all versions of the vampire story are about the subconscious.
Yep.
Right? And art comes from the dark, and in this case, the dark side of the subconscious.
I think there's also something else, a fear of death. There is a tempt. If you are religious, you believe that death is not the end, that there is something after. But even that is kind of scary. The unknown is always scary. Even if you believe you're going to heaven, you don't know what heaven is like, so it's a little scary.
You don't know what the process will be like to get there, right?
Right, exactly. But this idea that I want to hold off death as long as possible, live forever or die trying. I think that's another part of the vampire. But I think the TV series Buffy the Vampire Slayer had a great commentary on that, where the kid is dying and he wants to become a vampire. And she says to him, but you don't understand. You're not really living forever. Your soul leaves you. And all that's left is an empty husk with your memories. And that is not living. Yeah, a demon takes over your body. And he says, well, it's something. And so she just lets him become a vampire. And then when he comes out of the grave, she's there to stake him, because it's not him. Right?
Well, Bram Stoker actually dealt with that in an incredibly effective and subtle way. In the commentary, if you read the novel, whenever the vampires are killed, that includes the brides, and ultimately when Dracula himself is killed at the end, their faces of their bodies go to peace.
Yep.
Because they've been denied peace. In their seeking eternal life, they're living in eternal damnation in this life. It's a horrific life, right? And when they're actually killed, their faces are peaceful because they can find what's on.
That's exactly why of all the versions of Dracula I've seen, it's not the best, but there was one great scene in Bram Stoker's Dracula where they're talking about, having killed Lucy as a vampire. Did she suffer much? Sure, she suffered. But then we cut off her head and we cut out her heart and she's at peace. Want some meat?
That was a great commentary. I mean, I think I personally love that movie. I think that's one of Coppola's greatest movies.
If I have a fan edit of that film, I own the movie, okay? But I also have a fan edit of the film that takes out all the love story, because the tagline for that movie was "Love Never Dies," and the tagline for the fan edit is "Love Never Was," because that whole reincarnation love story is not in the original novel.
Well, what is in the movie that's not in the original novel, it's kind of almost implied there, because the novel does talk about the fact that Dracula had fought the Ottoman Turks, and which is Vlad
right, that he was Vlad Tepes. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And so I went to Romania, and I went
really.
I went to Romania 2 years ago. I went to Bulgaria last year, and a couple years before I went to Romania, and I went on a personal vampire Dracula tour. I just hired a guide who drove me all over the country.
Sure.
To take me to all the Vlad Tepes' historical sites.
I understand he's considered like a folk hero because literally he defended them against the Ottomans. I mean, from their standpoint, he was a hero.
He was. I mean, his whole thing was, I'm going to so scare the Ottomans that if I can torture my people like this, they're not going to try, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It a highway of dead bodies of his own subjects impaled on stakes. So when the Ottomans arrived, they're like, oh, this is what he's doing to his own people? Yeah, maybe we should step back.
Yeah.
So I went.
But he had a bad mustache. I didn't like that.
Even though in the original, in the Bram Stoker's novel, he does have a luxurious mustache.
Yes, he does. Yes.
Never mentioned in any of the movies.
Which is why I'm kind of looking forward to seeing this new Monsters movie by Rob Zombie. Seeing Grandpa with the beard and mustache.
Oh gosh.
So when I went to Romania, I went to this castle that's actually referenced in the opening of Bram Stoker's Dracula. Yes. Which is, there's a legend, and it's a real legend of Romania, based on true historical events. So this is a castle where the Ottomans had besieged Vlad Tepes, Vlad Dracula, right?
This is the one on the mountain?
It's one on the mountain. It's an hour to go up the mountain. It's like there's stairs, climbing these stairs for an hour, right? You get to the top of the mountain, and it's this actual castle, ruined castle, which was Dracula's castle, and there's all these areas that were, this is where he had the impaled victims. This was his,
Yep.
so he tells them. But the story, that's the actual Romanian story, is that when the Ottomans had surrounded it, his wife, she didn't want to surrender, and so she jumped from the top of the castle, and she plummeted to her death. The river still is called the Blood Red River or something like that.
Yep.
The river, in honor that she died and she fell into the river and drowned and died. And that we see in the opening scene of Dracula, and that is the part of the legend that Vlad Tepes is. He had a long-standing hatred for the Turks. He had been held by them as a child, and his brother eventually went over to the other side. His brother became a Muslim and fought for the Ottomans, right? But he hated them, and so. But the loss of his wife, Vlad got out through a secret passageway, and he escaped. And he's like, he vowed eternal vengeance against the Turks. But that's a real Romanian story that Coppola put into the movie and gives it a good motivation.
And I love that kind of thing, because I love when they honor history as well as, the source material. Yeah, you're right. The source material implies it, but doesn't come right out and say it. And I think Coppola just embraced it,
And then you have the humor aspect of it. Do not go, blah, 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 blah.
What is that? That's Hotel Transylvania. Yeah. That's,
oh my gosh.
I don't know what company did that. That wasn't a Disney Pixar thing, was it?
I don't think so.
I'm sorry, I don't remember. I've seen like all of them. I just don't know what company did that. It is very, very funny. Yeah.
Was it Frank Langella who did the famous Dracula in the late 70s? Right? Was that his take? Right, the very sexy Dracula.
Well, Frank Langella did a 70s version. Yeah, and a very sexy version. I mean, and it was weird to see him come back later as Perry White as an older man.
And
there you go, Frank Langella.
And he did that line of, I never drink wine, which is, I think, in the original.
I never drink wine. Well, I do.
So, he threw it away. He didn't, and that's what made it more effective. He just he's this very charming count, and that's why the line hits home. He doesn't emphasize. He just throws it away because he's a good actor, right?
Yeah.
We're chilling that way.
And Hotel Transylvania was Sony Pictures.
Oh, it was Sony. Okay, there you go. So. There you go. But that's a great, humorous, family-friendly interpretation of Dracula.
If I may, I want to, because I don't know how much more time we've got. I want to jump in a little bit to some of the real stories that I've heard.
Yeah. I was gonna tell you if you want to go for that.
So let me tell you two stories. One is, these are both personal experiences from friends of mine who I trust that they're not crazy and not pulling my leg, right? Because I know them well. One of them is an Indonesian man who told me this actually changes his life, changes his entire worldview with this incident. So I met him here in LA, and Indonesia is a primarily Muslim country, and there's a lot of stories of jinn kind of creatures, we call them, but they tap into pre-Islamic stories as well. And so in Indonesia, they have this thing called the Pontianak, I believe is what it's called, which is a vampire creature. And so my friend was telling me the story, how he was educated in the West, he got his engineering degree, thought he was a brilliant scientist, understood the world, and he came back to visit relatives in Indonesia, and some island might have been like Java or whatever. And he went, and his uncle and aunt, he was staying with them, and he told me that beautiful place by the sea, but there was a lovely forest right nearby the village. And his uncle and aunt said, look, the forest is basically safe. You don't have any tigers or anything like that. But the only thing is, don't go out in the forest during twilight, sunset to last light. Don't do that. And he said, what do you mean? Why? He said, because there's a jinn, there's a spirit that dwells there that comes out during twilight, and you don't want to mess with it, right? And he's like, okay, these people are silly, superstitious, foolish people, right? And so one day he's exploring the island, he loves it, and here's the Maghrib call, the sunset prayer call, like from the mosque. He's like, oh, I should probably be heading back. But it's like, squid, I don't believe in these stupid fairy tales. I'm going to stick around and check out the forest, right? And so he does. And this is what he tells me. He says, so I'm walking in the forest after sunset, and it's really beautiful. It's very eerie. And then I suddenly hear a woman crying. And I was like, where's this crying coming from? And then he realized it's coming from above him. So he says, I looked up, and in this tree, like maybe about 10 feet above me, was a woman sitting on a branch. Like she was wearing, and he said, I could see her very clearly. There's still twilight, so I could see her in the light. She had very torn, ragged clothing and very raggedy black hair that looked like it hadn't been washed in weeks or whatever. And her face was covered because she was leaning forward into her hands and weeping into her hands, right? And he said, what the hell's going on here? So he called up the woman and he said, are you all right? Can I come up and help you? What's going on? Are you safe? And he says, then this crying turns to really sinister laughter.
Mm.
And then in the fading light, he got a better look at this woman. And he said, he realized her hands weren't human hands, that she was covering her face. They were birds' talons, giant birds like talons, right? And then this thing's like shrieking at him through these talons, right? And he says, I've never been that frightened in my life. I ran all the way back to the village, and I come there and like arrive like white as a ghost. And my uncle and I are like, well, we told you not to go there. We told you that thing is there. You think we're all crazy, right? And so he encountered a Pontianak, which is the Indonesian vampire. And I was reading in this book on the Vampire Almanac, which has a whole section on vampire stories from Indonesia, Malaysia. And the Pontianak is a woman that takes the form of a half bird. And the stories are often it's a woman that died in childbirth or lost its child in childbirth, right? Again, this whole thing of the mystery of life, right?
Yeah.
But then it will, if you mess with it, and this also, I understand, I found Chinese stories also of these creatures living in trees, and if you come under their tree, they'll kill you, they'll drain your blood and your life force, and that's what this thing will do. If you come under its tree, and he's like, I saw the actual legend. I'm under the tree of this thing, and it's there, and it's like shrieking at me, and I'm like, okay, this thing is real. The thousands of year stories, it's because people saw this thing, right? And they're not making it up. And so that's one story from a very close friend of mine who said this changes worldview. He said, I suddenly understood all the Western science I've been taught was a small understanding of the universe. We don't understand this universe.
More things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy, Horatio.
Exactly. And so he saw that. The second story I'll share is from a Turkish Sufi mystic. And it's interesting because so many of these vampire stories you have in the West come from Ottoman Turkey's encounter with Eastern Bulgaria, Romania. The word vampire is actually Albanian, vampir, and Albania is an Ottoman Turkish colony that's still, Dua Lipa is our lovely Albanian pop star, right? And so he comes out from that tradition. So he has a long history of Ottoman stories of vampires. And so there's this creature called the Hortlak, which is the Ottoman Turkish. And again, this is pre-Islamic stuff. So prior to Islam, the Ottoman Turks were shamanistic people, right? So he had stories from even before Islam, and then they incorporated Islam. So the Hortlak is this vampire creature, very similar in the way, that you would see the Nosferatu archetype. Right? And so he said one day, because he's part of a very old Sufi mystical tradition. There's a Sufi order there that, his father was very high up. And so he had access to all these old books of spiritual knowledge that, he probably shouldn't have been messing with. So as a teenager, he once went into like his father's library and he found this old, ancient Turkish book about magic spells. And one of them was to conjure up a Hortlak and make it appear in the physical world. And being said, I was like 17 or whatever, and I just thought I understood everything. So I sort of jokingly, I did the ritual and the spell just to see if it would work. I was like, I want to see a Hortlak, right? He didn't believe it. He didn't believe that was actually going to lead to anything. So he said, well, nothing happened. No Hortlak appeared. Like, all right, whatever, it's just legends. So he says a couple of days later, he has to get on the ferry to cross the other side of the Bosphorus, right? Constantinople, Istanbul is divided by the Bosphorus, right? So you got to across or take a car. So he was taking the ferry across. So he said, I got on the ferry and I'm there. It's like whatever, half an hour across. And I'm getting the ferry. I'm standing there. It's a very cloudy day. There's no sun. And we're just standing there. I'm looking out at the ocean. It's really like deathly still and quiet. And for some reason, none of the crews, like they're all gone off the deck. There's like nobody in the deck, right? And it's just me. And he says, there's a guy standing there next to me who's wearing a long flowing coat. It looked really old fashioned. And he was bald. And he was just looking out, gazing out at Istanbul. And I tried to strike up a conversation with the guy. So then he turns to look at me and he said, it's the creature from Nosferatu, the bald-headed, the pointy ear thing. It said, it turned to look at me and it smiled and opened its mouth. It said, it's like a horror movie. The mouth opened normally more than it's humanly possible. The jaw dropped beneath what is physically possible. And these massive fangs in there as it's looking right at him. And he realized, oh my God, that's the Hortlak I summoned. It's appeared now. And he just ran inside the boat and he hid like in a cabin, right? until it's time to get off and go to and he's like, that changed his life because he realized maybe he shouldn't be messing with these old books.
Right.
direct story from him, from a man I believe who's a Sufi, the head of a Sufi order now, and he's like,
Wow.
I learned that these are creatures that are not, they're the reason the world has these stories because they're real. You know, encounter them in various forms, but they are real.
Real quick, those are interesting, and those are the things that could keep a person up at night.
Yeah.
Why sleep with a nightlight? But just kidding. I'll get to the other comments, but real quick, we have an awesome super sticker from Cardinal Sin, who I'm sure will join us next month. But for now, he is in our chat giving us a $10 super sticker, and it looks like it is a #1 fan. Wow. Well, yeah. Thank you so much. That's awesome. Thank you for that. And so many interesting conversations going on here in our chat with various things. I think this is a fascinating topic and one that is one of my favorites. There's so much more to talk about with that. We have we got to Transylvania. I've always wanted to go to, or actually, there is difficult to travel
through. Yeah.
My travels in before I got there. Sorry, thanks for helping me read, guys. I'm doing it with my glasses.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be a real vampire with the glasses
so
on.
he said he heard that Bulgaria was hard. I mean, I'm sure Bulgaria was hard to travel to during the communist era, but when I went there last year, it was actually more open than America was. America was still very heavily locked down, and Bulgaria was like, yeah, whatever. You know, we've survived everything. We'll survive this, right? And I fell in love with the country. I want to go back again. It's incredible.
And while we had agreed, I won't share Nanette and my personal story with local vampires. I would encourage everyone to check out, and this is something you could easily Google. Just do a little research on the Highgate Vampire. That's an incredibly interesting story of a possibly real world vampire. Look into it.
That's it. Yeah, there's a lot of stories out there. Definitely interesting to read about, which is where I think a lot of these movies are based off of, which is why I get curious about them because, you know, there's so many varieties of them, which indicates a variety of different stories that people are coming across and wanting to create it into a movie for us to be able to see. Look up.
Here's the Highgate Vampire. Our friend Mandy Summers just got this incredible graphic novel out, Jack the Ripper Vampire Slayer, which is telling of both the Jack the Ripper story, and it's actually set with the being that would become the Highgate Vampire is essentially the villain of the story. And it's if you haven't bought it, you've got to buy it. Some of the most beautiful.
Wow.
I did not make that connection. I have the comic myself, different cover, but
wow.
Yeah. But it's I talked to Mandy about it. It's based on, and there's been some recent documentaries about the Highgate Vampire. If you may not be able to talk about, I will. That there was a 1970s one of the most documented, witnesses of some kind of vampiric creature in an old cemetery, Highgate Cemetery in London, and dozens of people witnessed it to the point that authorities had to take it seriously, right? And it remains a great unsolved mystery today. And it was very much a creature like the Nosferatu archetype, right? Appearing very similar to what my Sufi friend described. Very tall, bald. And
I have always been a proponent that fiction is like dreams. They are our way of dealing with things that may never happen, may never even be possible, but will nonetheless be prepared for them. And I see so many horror films, and I think everybody who's ever seen a horror film knows the tropes and has played the little game. But if I was in that circumstance, I would do this and I would do this. Good. You think about those things. And then make sure that if it ever does happen, you actually have the wherewithal to do those things. Keep your head and don't just assume, oh, this is just fiction. This could never happen. Better safe than sorry.
Yeah. Well, I think we don't want to tempt fate sometimes because, people like to dance, but they don't,
like to pay the piper.
Yeah. I was going to bring up something here somebody had mentioned because it's one of my favorite. Brian, thank you for that. Forever Night. This brings me to a subject of one of my favorite shows. I don't know if you guys have seen it. I think it's a Canadian.
Yeah, Forever Night. Was he like the immortal dude who became a cop? Was that
yes.
Yeah.
Yep, that was a Canadian production.
The
Yeah.
thing about it is that he was always trying to find a way to become human. So people are wanting to become vampires. Vampires want to become human. No one's ever happy. And so I'm kind of curious about that as well. Is what do you think that would cause someone to want to? I mean, be curious enough to tap into the human side. um because how many there's a lot of vampire movies out there where they're some are trying to not be that. Is it, do they feel it's a curse? Do they feel that they don't like certain aspects of it? I mean, I'm kind of going on here, but my brain is like spinning around here,
I get
but
it.
I'm not sure if I'm
Well,
explaining
Tolkien
it
answered it. Tolkien actually answered it. It's
Mhm.
in his
right. Oh,
book. There is vampire lore in Tolkien. Sauron
Yep.
take the form of a vampire, right? That's actually in Silmarillion, right? That that was one of the forms he would take as a vampire. But there's a line that always struck me when I read the Silmarillion, which I think is that's his life seminal work of the history of Middle Earth, right? Which is it's like the Hebrew Bible. It's this huge story. But there's this great line that never left me in this 5,000-page work, which is how the gift, death is the gift that Eru, the creator, gave the human race.
Mm-hmm.
It's a gift, right? Even though we think of it as a curse. And the elves and the have immortality, or at least a form of it. They can be killed, but they don't. Their spirits still are bound to this world. They go to the Isle of Manwë and they stay there in this world, in a sort of paradise on this world, right? But he said that in the end, even the eternal beings, the Ainur, right, of which Gandalf is one, like the eternal gods, right, the angelic gods that have always existed, will envy the gift of humans because they can't leave this world, and eventually it becomes a trap. So the elves are trapped, and immortality becomes a horrific trap. It's boredom, right? And there's a limit to it because no matter how wonderful this world is, eventually after 10,000 years, you've seen it all, right? And even the Manwë, the great king of the Ainur, will one day envy the lowest of human beings that they can leave reality, but they can't. And so Tolkien answered it. That's why when you kill Dracula, he's at peace, because the eternal life he sought is a curse.
It makes me wonder if back when Doctor Who was good, the writers tapped into that as well. There was I don't remember who the companion was who says to the Doctor being an effectively immortal being, when she finds out what existence for him is like, she says, well, we must be like little ants to you. You must look down on us. And he goes, oh no, you don't understand. You only live for a short time from my perspective, but your light shines so bright. And that's kind of a great, beautiful way of kind of putting it into context. I think that many of the people that and the Hammer stories that did a lot of great vampire stories used to tap into this as well. These vampires that have no soul, no conscience, but they have the memories of their human host. And if that human host had enough sense of character, they understand what they've lost. So they will seek out the vampire hunter and say, put an end to this misery that I'm going through. Because they recognize that this is a curse. This is not the blessing they thought it would be of eternal life. And then you look at something like The Highlander, and that beautiful song by Queen, Who Wants to Live Forever, right? This idea, and the vampire stories do this all the time. It's, you think you want to live forever, but then when everyone you love around you dies, and you're alone,
You get tired of him. I wouldn't want to pay bills that long.
There's a friend of ours who wrote a book called Keeper of the Sins, The Left Hand of God. It's about a vampire with a soul. And his mission by the Vatican is to collect all these cursed objects and lock them in ways that nobody else can get them. They're very evil objects. So in exchange for getting all these evil things and locking them away, they're promising him absolution so that he can be forgiven for the sins of him being.
And that's what it is. It's that desire for redemption, that desire for absolution. Even in death, this idea, which a vampire is. Let's face it, a vampire is dead, right? But they're in that in between line. It's like, can I still? Now I've seen what it's like to be alive, to be dead, and that there's something else. Can I still be saved?
But by the way, I don't know if you all remember, Doctor Who has done several vampire episodes.
Yes, they have.
I don't know whether it was the fourth or the fifth Doctor, but there was the one with the vampires that were essentially like kings on this planet, and there was a great vampire underneath that they were trying to resurrect, and then he literally. Doctor Who basically gets like a Saturn V rocket and plunges it into the heart of this.
Just take it through the heart.
Yeah, literally, it's like a massive rocket that's like the Saturn V, because this thing it's like the size of a planet. So he's got to plunge into the heart of this creature to kill it. This was a great episode.
Oh my god!
That you just had. Oh, that's one of my favorites. Fright Night.
Fright
Night.
Was it?
I love that scene. That scene, right, where Peter Vincent holds up the cross, and the vampire says, he just takes it from him. He goes, "You've got to have faith for this to work. It's the power isn't in the physical wooden object; it's in your faith." And then the kid stands up with his crucifix and he backs off.
Tiny one.
And in the end, Roddy McDowall does have faith. There's that great moment at the end where you see the first hint of light in the sky, and then he gets his faith, and then you see the reaction. Oh, what a great movie!
I love that too. I think Quentin Tarantino kind of played with that a little bit too in From Dusk Till Dawn, where you've got the vile, evil guy who is like, "Look, Father, I understand you've lost your faith, but for crying out loud, I'm the biggest sinner of sinners, and I've seen what's going on around me. I've seen the devil, and if there's a devil, there must be a God. So if I can find my faith, you better find your faith."
I know. Real quick, while we're winding down, I want to first of all, real quick. Yes, Once Bitten was one of the first movies I ever saw. Jim Carrey, love that one. Watch it all the time. One of my favorites.
I can't be a vampire. I'm a day person.
I know. I love that. Love that. Oh God, one of my favorites. I got to get that on media. I was going to ask Miss Netter, what's your opinion on glittery vampires? Where did those come from? Tell me what you think about glittery vampires. They crack me up.
No.
No, that's it.
It's like
No.
It's like vampires aren't supposed to glitter in the sunlight. They're supposed to turn to dust.
Right.
And there's a symbolism to that, right? The idea that the darkness is driven out by the light.
I can't get
Now,
myself.
don't get me wrong. I did read the series, and I tried to watch.
She
films.
tried to like it. She really gave it a
did.
chance.
I watched the first film and said that didn't happen. That didn't happen until the third book. That never happened.
Dead and loving
What
it.
the heck is that? It just went no.
Oh no! Wait a minute. That was
But I did
Love
try
At
to
First
like
Sight.
it.
Love at First
Yeah.
Sight. Yeah.
I did as well, because I'm thinking I'm betraying my love for vampire movies if I sit here, but I couldn't. I think it was
It's painful.
mostly made for teenagers and their little, fantasies
angsty
and
things.
stuff. It was a little too much for.
And that child she had was just nightmare fuel. I just it was like Chucky bad.
Oh
I'm
my
trying to find
goodness.
in the vampire. Here it is. I was going through my vampire tarot, and this is the sun. This is the sun card, which is the famous card in the tarot. This is how they do it in this. Isn't that lovely? Look at that.
Oh,
Nice.
that's beautiful.
Brilliant.
Wow.
This is an
Brilliant.
incredible deck, right?
It
This
is. The artist is
Sun
just
card is just destroying the other vampire.
really done quite the number.
And it's a rare deck now, so if anyone can find it, you get it, because it's a collector. And I'm amazed at this.
I have not seen this, but I have heard so much about
It's
it.
hilarious.
Okay.
Love it. You got to see it. You got to see it. Gosh, there's so much to this, and my stomach is it sounds like Chewbacca underwater. It is growling something fierce. It's growling something fierce. I wanted to say hi real quick before we take off. Rod, thank you so much for joining and being here, and also my good friend here, Mr. D Side Punch. Good to see you. Master of Horror there, creates horror movies himself. So thank you so much for
Did you see
joining.
Rural Nation's super chat?
Oh yeah, getting there. I'm getting there. Let me see. Whoa. Wait. I'm.
Oh, I haven't seen that name in the chat for a while. Rod Thunderheart.
I know, right? I know it's been a while. Thank you. $5 super chat from Orville Nation. You are just spoiling me with the super chats.
Should
Very charged question: should vampires be cast as Batman?
He's of course referring to the last Batman movie that starred the. I keep referring to it as Sparkly Batman. Interestingly, though,
I liked it. I thought it was fun.
there is a whole bunch of Batman comics that Batman versus Dracula, or where Batman becomes a vampire. There's one where Superman becomes a vampire. That's pretty icky too.
That's kind of interesting. Everybody wants to be a vampire.
Well,
Um,
one of the in pre-Columbian in Mayan tradition, there's the god of the underworld amongst the ancient Mayan was, I believe, was Kamazots, who was a bat god. He was an underworld bat god who was essentially vampiric, right? So this idea of Batman, they actually have, it's fascinating because you'll see statues to Kamazots which look like the modern costume of Batman, right? He's got the foot here, and in some ways Batman was designed off of Kamazots.
It's interesting you say that because there was a great Elseworld comic where Batman was a priest in a very Cromwell-led kind of modern day, and when he becomes Batman, he chooses the visage of a demon because it's going with the whole religious thing, and of course, what you just shared kind of makes sense.
oh my goodness, there's so much more to this. I really like
Fanzine. I was just talking about you a little bit earlier. How
Yes.
I need to get you on my channel again for a rewatch sometime real soon.
There it is. That's a Kamazots.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Incredible. So why don't we give Netter the last word here?
That's
Because
what I was going to
Absolutely.
interrupting her, so I want to give her the last word on Vampire.
I know. She's all sitting back quiet. And
Well, it's like, the guys have had so much to say. So, I mean, for me, it's like I always liked I guess you could call it sultry vampires. So, like, I'm drawing a blank on his name. Where's Karloff?
Lugosi?
Bela
Bela
Lugosi.
Lugosi. They got those eyes that just suck you in, and you just can't help but be mesmerized by them. It's like Nosferatu, not my thing. It's like, no, sorry, dude, you would never make it with me.
Yeah.
Sparkly vampire.
So she does kind of lean towards the sparkly vampires, just not all that far.
Well, you'd like Frank Langella then. He was the sexy vampire.
Mm-hmm.
He was okay. I mean, he had the hair going for him.
Yeah, back when he had hair. Yeah.
Lugosi is so archetypal. Lugosi is, this guy was a stage actor, and he just
Yes,
knew
he
how
was.
to vote. He came out of films, and he just knew how to use his face.
He did.
Did he play Dracula on stage before he? I thought so. Okay.
Yeah, that's what got him the role.
Yeah.
It's fun. I've actually, because I'm a weirdo that always looks down where do celebrities live because I live in LA, and so I've located the apartment, the little apartment he used to live in when he got cast in Dracula, and I found old photos of him standing by the fireplace. Then I went to Zillow, and that apartment, and there's pictures of the apartment. The fireplace is still there, right?
Oh,
and
nice.
it's market, but I would totally buy that place.
Right? It's like he stood right here. This is where that picture was
Where he
taken.
got the letter for that I've been cast in Dracula at this address. So, yeah.
That's history. That's like standing where history happened.
For the vampire books, I read the books before I saw any movies because I started reading
She's a reader.
novels. I mean, I was reading Tolkien when I was 4. My brother told me the story of The Hobbit, and I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. So I took the book off the shelf, started reading, and of course my mom's like, honey, you're not reading, you're only 4. I'm like, no, Mom, I'm reading. And I started telling her,
Reading
the
it out
lines.
loud, yeah.
And she's like, you're 4, how are you reading this?
Passion.
So I would take all these different books off the bookcase, and I would just sit there and devour them because I loved reading. And I don't know where the vampire books came from, but they were on the bookshelf, so I started reading them, and I fell in love with the stories. So Anne Rice and all of those. I started reading a little bit later in life, but I love the stories. And when you see them turned into films, they can't really portray everything as well as they can in the book, but still interested to see, well, how would they do this scene? How would they do that scene? And sometimes they can actually do a pretty good portrayal of what the book said. Other times it's a clear miss. But for the most part, it's like there's still that mysticism there, and there's the mystery, the suspense, all that in there that I enjoyed.
Oh
And
yeah.
if you want to read a pretty interesting vampire book, read what was that called again? Keeper of the Sins.
Oh yeah,
Left Hand of God.
Keeper of the
It's
Sins.
by
Our friend
buddy
wrote it.
Chad Bednar.
Chad Bednar.
And if you search on YouTube, you will find a promo that Troy and I were in for that book, and I play like 5 different characters, but you have to figure out which one is next.
I play an angry priest. You can't miss me.
Yeah, it's like
No.
I play 1 female and like 4 males.
That's great.
That's very progressive of you. I like it.
I know. Right?
It was a necessity.
Well, it's also very progressive because old theater, you know, the men would all play the women. So
Right.
We were a total cast of 5 people, so I had to play multiple parts, and it was actually kind of fun. We just put different wigs on me, and it's like, or you'd see just my hand or something like that. But it's like, okay, well, there's me in that scene, and there's me there, and see if you can figure out which scenes are me.
Oh my gosh.
But it was fun to do and fun to watch. So it's like kind of like towards easy to pick out. It's me that you guys think, is that Netter?
We'll have to do that. Get quizzed on it. Well, in case we creeped you guys out tonight, I thought I'd end on one of everybody's favorite vampires. Isn't that something that even Sesame Street highlighted that as well?
Yep, the Count. Count Von Count was his official name.
Yes, Count Von Count. Yes, that's awesome. Well, I want to thank you all so much for starting us off this October. This coming tomorrow, right? Today's the 30th.
Yep.
Today, Hocus Pocus 2 comes out on Disney Plus, so
Interesting.
everybody's gonna be watching that. So I was all in the mood for Halloween stuff. Vampire is gonna be coming out this month. I'm so excited about that.
Good.
Yes, it's going to be lots of fun. So maybe we can continue the discussion, maybe lead from vampires and work our way to Frankenstein or something to that effect.
Mary Shelley, good.
Right, that's the other.
Yeah.
It's they're linked into it. And so
Yeah. Absolutely. I saw somebody mention that in the chat. I thought I'd bring that up. I think that might be kind of good. So that sounds like lots of fun. Thank you all for the super chats and everything. I'm trying to think what's got coming up. I forget myself. But I hope you guys all had fun.
Thanks for having
That
us.
was great.
Yeah, Netter, thank you for joining. And Cameron, always good to have you. I think I'm gonna have to get some of the information on those cards. Somebody had asked some questions about it, and I forgot what they had asked.
Vampires
Let
Tarot.
me just bring that up again. Somebody asked what it had in the front. I'm not sure.
Tarot of the Eternal Night.
Back, and that's it's this full collection set that I got, has it has a booklet in here that goes into the meanings of the cards, very profound. I think you can get just the cards on Amazon, but the booklet and the entire set I can't find it anymore. Find it. It's a collector's thing. Get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And even PJ saying Frankenstein, very good.
Frankenstein, yes.
Frankenstein. And I think Mary What's Her Toes did a great job with that. But anyway, I'm going to get going. I didn't mean to keep you all since I know you guys have another stream later.
I do.
And Cameron has things to do.
I have to turn down others this afternoon because I've got to actually get other work done.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I don't have time to spend all day with you, Maria. So,
I love
you
this
need
one.
to be on Troy's channel, the two of you talking about vampires, because he loves vampires.
Well, Troy knows how to get a hold of me, and so just I'm happy and honored to come on anytime.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you. I will take you up on that. Thank you.
That's kind of why I put you here, because I thought maybe since you're great on the subject and Cameron loves it, it would be a great way to do that and connect. So, awesome. He's
a good-looking guy there.
Honorary vampire, Cameron.
I will take it.
He's got fangs. He's got fangs.
This is, my mom is the expert on Photoshop. I can't do anything. Right? I'm the filmmaker that can't do anything on Photoshop. can like do magical things that I don't understand. But that's cool.
That was awesome. That was awesome. Thank you again, all, and we will see you next time here on Tea and Telly with Heartwood Productions. To thank you for all your super chats. Your what's it? I'm starting to look for my buttons here, and we will catch you all next time. Be good to each other and to animals, and do what you can to help those people out in Florida. Okay.
Yep.
Cheers, guys.